Good evening, welcome to RFL. We're going to start right off with the NFL, where Roger Goodell today broke his silence, obviously with a string of controversies that have dogged the NFL. I want to go to Marcy Gonzalez, who joins us live with the very latest.
Good evening. With an independent investigation underway into the NFL's handling of the Ray Rice case, the league's commissioner admitted here again today that he made a mistake.
Unfortunately, over the past several weeks, we have seen all too much of the NFL doing wrong. That starts with me.
NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell breaking his silence after 4 players were accused of domestic violence in just the last 2 weeks, responding to criticism that the league hasn't done enough to address this serious problem.
The same mistakes can never be repeated. We will get our house in order first.
The commissioner hasn't been heard from in more than a week, last commenting after this video surfaced showing Baltimore Ravens star Ray Rice beating his then fiancée. But since then, 3 other players have been pulled off the field. Minnesota Vikings star Adrian Peterson charged with hitting his 4-year-old son with a tree branch. The Carolina Panthers also sidelining their star Greg Hardy, who was convicted of assaulting his ex-girlfriend. And Arizona Cardinals player Jonathan Dwyer benched and out on bail, accused of headbutting and punching his wife, as well as throwing a shoe at their toddler.
I'll never hurt my son.
The drama playing out with little response from the league until today. Some now calling for Goodell to resign.
He's got to regain my faith, because right now, personally, I believe we need a new commissioner, no matter what he says.
But Goodell said today he has not considered resigning and that he is instead just focusing on changing policies in the league to educate players and hold them accountable. Live in New York, Marcy Gonzalez, ABC News. Now back to you.
All right, Marcy, thank you very much. And we even have more of an update on this. I'm going to bring you up to speed on that as well. But let's bring on our panel first. We're joined by Bill O'Reilly, Republican strategist. He's served as Rob Astorino's spokesman in his 2 successful runs for Westchester County exec. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. C. Scott Vanderhoff, an attorney and former Rockland County executive many times over. And Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. I want to get to the update in a second, but for those who got to see the 50-some-odd minute press conference, the commissioner started as you would have expected. There was a mea culpa off the top, but then, especially when the questions started coming after he talked about all the prospective things the league would look into and all the hope that he would solicit, it was an evasive conference. Very little in the way of specifics. You wondered why 10 days of constant asking, where's the commissioner, where the commissioner would produce the following. And in the response immediately after, he has been really slammed for absence of transparency. Tonally, it came off a little deaf that he didn't, well, he may have understood the gravity of it. He certainly didn't understand the frustration from so many people as to what more the league was going to do specifically now. There was a lot of deferring to so many people, and when pressed specifically on the Ray Rice incident and some of the others, he said, you know what, they'll have to look into it. If this was coming clean, at least by most accounts, if not universally, he fell short. And you heard from some of the players, both former and current, they say, you hold us to a certain standard. You're the boss here. This happened on your watch. Where's even a fine for you or any form of punishment as well? We're going to get into all that. But before we even get into the reaction to what he said or didn't say, Andrew, I was watching some of the reaction, and Outside the Lines, which is a sports magazine show that does a lot of investigative work, again, it's primarily focusing on sports. They broke a story about 15 minutes ago that could have more reverberation, especially as it relates to the Ray Rice story.
It's a big one. The headline from it, which is that the Ravens had that video from inside the elevator of the Ray Rice incident. Right, the one that we only saw a few weeks ago. They had it the entire time. They had it back in February. Inside the Lines, or Outside the Lines rather, is reporting that the way they summarize it, it paints a picture of a league and a franchise, in their words, whose actions and inaction combine to conceal or ignore the graphic violence of the assault. They say they have 20 sources that indicate a pattern of misinformation and misdirection. There was a campaign from the Ravens for leniency from the NFL. They wanted a 2-game suspension. They got a 2-game suspension. They report that the NFL took an intentionally passive approach to the investigation. We don't want to see anything. We don't want to know. And they also say that that campaign for leniency from the Ravens, at least from the Ravens at this point and not necessarily the NFL, also extended to the officials in Atlantic County, the prosecutors. They wanted this kept quiet, and they wanted Ray Rice, at least according to ESPN's reporting, to be the target of a minimal investigation.
And he ended up getting a diversionary program, which will be completely expunged from his record here in less than a year's time if he keeps his nose out of trouble. But again, if there was one worry for the commissioner beyond the PR, and you've seen sponsors coming out, is on this specific Ray Rice incident, he's gone on in front of CBS and others and said, hey, we never saw the video. They refused to make it available. Already, the prosecutor's office has said that's not true. No one even asked us for it. They've hired the former FBI director to look into it. But if outside the lines, and they have 20 sources on this, if they're proven right, that contradicts what both the commissioner has said and certainly the Ravens has said, that they had no knowledge. Again, as everybody remembers, Ray Rice got 2 games originally here, and then after the hue and cry that was universal, it says, my God, that's all he got after you give guys 4 games for taking Adderall or something, or even longer. Look what happened to the Saints last year because of Bountygate, right? Then all of a sudden they said, oh, we couldn't imagine what could have happened inside that elevator, that she was knocked unconscious, and then they suspended him indefinitely. All right. You've all done or covered here crisis management in different ways, but this is 101 crisis management. What was Goodell trying to accomplish today, both in addressing a nationwide audience and then also taking the Q&A?
And I didn't see the news conference, but in any crisis communications plan, you want to end the news conference with no more questions coming in. You want to get information out accurately, succinctly, and you want the questions to be over. You never want to step down from that podium having new questions arise.
And in fact, that final image at the end of it, the handler came out and said, no more questions, no more questions. Right. And then the commissioner said, you guys got the papers, as he moved off here without even gathering it. Just optically, it didn't feel right. And I'm curious from your end, everybody sometimes either inherits or doesn't manage a problem well or whatever else. It just seems they never bit the bullet from the beginning here. And they tried to hope that because they're the NFL, the thing will get moved away or another cycle would change the story or whatever else. And they seem to be reaping what they sow.
Well, first of all, I think the commissioner was awkwardly unprepared. And after 10 days, you cannot be that way.
Yep.
He had to be forceful. He had to be direct. He had to be able to answer the questions. And the parts I saw, he was not. That's number one. But there's something else here. All throughout this, it has looked as if, and I now believe that the NFL concealed this, purposely did it, said it'll go away. Domestic violence is a very serious issue throughout the United States. In Rockland County, we've battled it for years because it's the quiet issue. Yeah. No one wants to talk about it. It's hard to recognize. Sometimes spouses don't come forth for one reason or another. So it is one of those crimes, it's a crime, that is often put on the shelf, and the NFL has done this, and they can't dig themselves out. And quite frankly, if you follow the money now, all of a sudden they've become far more assertive on this issue of domestic violence because sponsors are starting to pull away. And I think commissioners got serious troubles, and it's not because of the issue of what players do, it's because of what, again, the cover-up. The concealment of this thing.
You know, it's funny. I thought it was like an Obama level of coverage. We have, like a lot of newsrooms, about 8 or 9 TVs in a row that are turned to all different networks. He was on every single one of them, the way that if the president was addressing the country. I mean, this was that much attention. And he didn't offer any concrete answers. He didn't offer any specific plans of action. It was all very vague, and we'll have something in place by the Super Bowl. And he wouldn't even explain whether he meant that the group will be in place by the Super Bowl or we'll have an action plan or what they'll have done by the Super Bowl. You combine that, a fairly ineffective press conference, with this latest development, and if this fleshes out, this is real trouble.
But you know, there's so many ways in this, Dom, that, first of all, they haven't, like we've seen in so many different things. I mean, look, what did Christie got a lot of heat? We'll talk about him later in a second, but who did he hire to go do the report? He hired, obviously, an attorney that many people question would have any objectivity, let alone a little bit even that was attached to it, Mr. Master and stuff. They hire Mueller. Now, everybody believes this is a straight arrow guy, former FBI director. But his law firm represents the owner of the Ravens, who has worked there in the past. They do business with the law firm. Why wouldn't you avoid any even appearance of impropriety, right? Again, they did that. You know, there were so many different steps along the way. They interviewed Rice with his wife sitting right there, which nobody thought made sense. But you're starting to see the players the players all knew that this commissioner wanted to be judge and jury when they did wrong. What his word was the final one. They want to appeal it, they're going to appeal it to the same guy, him, who gave the original punishment. You saw what Teddy Bruschi had to say, the former Patriot most notably, and now you got other players who are tweeting during the press conference, how come I got 2 games here for wearing the wrong uniform? Or how come I got a fine here for saying something out of hand? The buck stops with him. Where's his fine? Where's his punishment? Where's the accountability for this commissioner when this happened on his watch? I thought Andrew weeks ago was wrong here, that the commissioner was in any kind of real trouble. But as more and more stuff comes out, I'm not positive he survives.
Well, it depends on Andrew's report at the top of the show. If that's accurate from the ESPN show, Outside the Lines, then the commissioner has a problem. But I of all people, I think Michael Vick has a point, and the point that he made on this. He said, give the commissioner some time. No matter what you want, it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to get it. At the end of the day, because of public pressure and sponsor pressure, I think you're going to have a zero tolerance policy. And what Chris Carter said the other day, who had problems in the NFL himself with drugs, when he said the only thing that players respect is that if you take them off the field. Yep. That's what we're seeing now, and I think at the end of the day there will be zero tolerance. But this commissioner is not going to lose his job unless that information is accurate.
I think, though, in all sports, I mean, the NFL is getting kicked all over the country and all over the press. I mean, the NFL, not to defend what happened, but the NFL is not a law enforcement authority. And for years, maybe they looked away. But it probably happened in the NBA, in Major League Baseball, in politics it happens, where you have sexual harassment that happens. You're
absolutely right, Bill. And one of the things, I thought the commissioner was right on, but the problem was it was stuck in the middle of the evasiveness. So it just kind of, he's right. Different states have different laws in terms of the prosecution of this.
Law enforcement will
also,
do it, right.
you know, and it's until proven guilty. I understand all that. But teams have the discretion, and the league has the discretion to say, you'll get your paycheck, but you're not going to wear the uniform here. Right. And they all could have done that, and that would have sent them. They've chosen to do it. Now they look reactive rather than proactive through this whole thing, but they weren't alone. But man, you would think, as savvy a PR monolith as the NFL is, and almost everything they do, they couldn't have handled this thing worse in the last 2 weeks. Now, everything they do, they're looking to do it for CYA rather than maybe getting ahead of this, which they kind of usually do.
I think we, though, may be rapidly approaching the time where the owners are saying we need to turn the page and make this go away. And if Goodell can't do that, and soon, they'll make him the page turn.
I think you're right, Andrew. And I think, you know, people forget that the game is popular. We watch it, we enjoy it. And this is a distraction. It's a horrible situation. Yep. But the games on Sunday are what most people are looking for. And if Goodell has to go because we're missing that point, he will.
All right. When we come back, though, we're going to turn to an issue of global consequence here, and that is what is happening relating to ISIS. France, of all people here, they're launching their first series of airstrikes against ISIS, and the White House is standing firm in its position that boots won't be on the ground. But you got military, I'm talking current, not just former, who are saying setting that kind of limit here may not be what's in America's best interest. We'll talk about that with Mike Lyons, our military analyst, right after this.